guys, this is going to be my May wrap-up and June TBR. I decided to combine the two because I did not have a previous TBR, and that way we're just wrapping it all in one. Which is the point of a wrap-up, whatever. Okay. I'm going to go over the picture books first. If that's not something that interests you, I'll put the timer somewhere so you can see where the rest of my wrap-up continues. The first book in my wrap-up is Journey by Erin Becker. This ended up actually being my favorite of the picture books. Overall, it was the pictures that really got me in this book. I will say there are actually no words in this book, so when I say I read it, I mean I looked at every page and discerned my own story out of it. I think this book could really help kids who are very creative. As you can see, if my lighting isn't destroying this, the illustrations in this are really stunning, and they go throughout the book. There seem to be both a lot of European and Asian influence inside of the designs, along with what seemed to be a steampunk aspect. So if that interests you, or if you think it would interest your kids or your classroom, I highly recommend this book. The next book I read was Wolf in the Snow by Matthew Cordell, and I absolutely loved this book. Growing up in Alaska, a kid bundled up trudging through the snow really resonated with me, and while I didn't ever come across a wolf, I think I probably would have both died and been happy. Now, I swear I really do read books, but this book also does not have words in it. I loved this page best because it shows the kid holding a wolf pup and you see the mother wolf. The expressions as they look at each other, I think, honestly speak louder than words. The next two picture books I read, and I actually did read these, were poetry books. The first book is Mirror Mirror by Marilyn Singer, illustrated by Jose Massey. I hope I'm saying that right. And A Curious Collection of Cats. And these are poems by Betsy Franco, illustrated by Michael Wirtz. The first thing that interested me about Mirror Mirror was the cover. It seemed to be kind of a fantasy cover, and I wanted to see how they did poems based off of like fairy tales. On the first page, you are shown two different pictures showing two different parts of the story. There's still a lot of cohesion within the pictures though, and I just overall thought that they were really beautiful illustrations. And then you are given two poems, one from each character's perspective, and I promise I won't just sit here and read poems to you all day. I will read this one, however, because I was pretty impressed with how these poems were created. Typical, hacking through the briars, looking for love. The prince at work, but I have to be sleeping, never partying, never out in the world. It's no fun being in a fairy tale. And that goes with the princess's story, and then on the other side you have the prince's story, which is, in a fairy tale, it's no fun being out in the world, never partying, never sleeping, but I have to be the prince at work, looking for love, hacking through briars. Typical. I just thought this was super cute because Marilyn Singer created one poem that she could reverse backwards, and so you have the first poem and then the other poem is the same exact poem but read in reverse. And I was honestly astonished each time. Each time I read a poem I was like, there's no way the other poem can match up. But it did, and I was thoroughly impressed. After that was The Curious Collection of Cats, which is a collection of cat poems, and the illustrations on this one are super neat. Each one is kind of like, I feel like I'm going to mess this up. I'm in no way an artist, but it seemed like Art Deco. Is that a thing? Leave me a comment below if I completely butchered that. But each poem is an ode to a cat from their owner, and I thought they were all pretty cute and showed both the neurotic and narcissistic side of cats. Next up was The Water Princess, written by Susan Veraday and illustrated by Peter H. Reynolds. This book is actually based off of the childhood experiences of Georgie Badiel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You follow Gigi's story, and it explains her story of how she grew up without water. I thought this book did a beautiful job of showing empathy for what is otherwise kind of an overlooked problem in our world. I will also say the pictures in this book were stunning. The end of the story, as well as the last pages where it talks about the inspiration of the story, her mother and her would have to journey for the better part of a day just to get to the well, only to have to carry jugs of water all the way back home and do it the next day. It talks about how not all children get to have an education, and that sometimes the most important part of their day is just getting to drink water. The next two books I'm going to talk about, I'm actually supposed to be reading next month. My TBR for next month is actually going to be science themed, so these were kind of cheats, but after looking at this one, I couldn't help but read it, and this one was underneath it. First off is Star Stuff, Carl Sagan and the Mysteries of the Cosmos by Stephanie Roth Sisson. Shh. Quiet, or you can't sit here. You gonna be quiet? Star Stuff was super cute. I was really impressed with this book and how it brought imagination and science into the same room, because a lot of the time you think of left side of the brain, right side of the brain, but the two can definitely go together, and this book does a really good job of showing that. It goes through Carl Sagan's childhood and kind of explains his inspiration for going into science, how he felt about the stars. The pictures in this book were also really neat. I liked some of them were 2 full pages, and some of them took up even more than that. Overall, this was a really fun way of reading a biography, and it made me want to learn more about Carl Sagan, and I think it would be a great introduction for a lot of kids who are into science, or maybe just have a lot of imagination and need a place to put it. My final picture book for the month of May was written and illustrated by Jason Chin, and it was called Gravity. Gravity was a lot of fun, though I did wish that this maybe had a little bit more words or a little bit more explanation. It gave a really good introduction to how gravity works and had a lot of good information on the back of the book that kind of filled in the blanks from the story. The font size is also quite large, and it can be great for new readers who are maybe a little bit more intimidated by smaller fonts. So that was my picture book wrap up. I have 3 middle grade, 2 YA, and then I will go into my June TBR. My first middle grade book I read was Doll Bones by Holly Black. Growing up, I really liked the Spiderwick Chronicles, so I was excited to see that she had another eerie kind of fairy tale that I could read. This ended up being actually a lot creepier for me than Spiderwick was. I wouldn't say this is quite a horror book, but it definitely had a pretty eerie paranormal quality to it, so if that's not something you're interested in, I would not read it, as there were definitely a few times that this book gave me chills. There were definitely some parts in this book I wouldn't have enjoyed reading at night. It is about 3 friends, Zach, Poppy, and Alice, told from Zach's perspective as they go to bury this doll who is made of human bone. There's a little bit of a murder mystery in here. Discussions guardians or teachers might want to have with their kids are elements having to deal with lying, running away, breaking and entering, stealing, and digging up the grave of a girl that is possessing a doll. While that might seem a little overwhelming out of context, I think some discussions you could have with your kids could be about family dynamics, how each parent reacts to the situation, how different characters felt while lying versus when the truth came out, and why the kids think that some of their actions seemed necessary at that point in time. I think on Goodreads I'm going to end up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. It had a lot of really good elements into it. I definitely wanted the mystery to be solved, but there were some points in the plot where I felt it was kind of slow moving or even unnecessary. I think this is also a really good time to point out that I actually don't dog-ear library books. I do use bookmarks. I also read this month One Crazy Summer by Rita Williams Garcia. One Crazy Summer follows 3 sisters, Delphine, Vonetta, and Fern, who are sent to Oakland, California to get to know their mother that abandoned them when they were younger. And the girls at first go to a Black Panther day camp instead of Disneyland because their mother is making poetry in the kitchen. Not a metaphor, literally, is making poetry in the kitchen. Guardians and teachers can definitely have a discussion about how to treat people who are different than you, and I will also point out that the main character not only struggles with racism, but also explores it within herself. This story was actually really fast-paced, despite not having a lot of plot, and I was really happy with all the character development that happened throughout. On Goodreads, I will be giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. And last of my middle grade reads, I read The Penderwicks at Last by Jean Birdsall. I will say right off the bat, I really liked this book. I know it's getting really mixed reviews from people who shipped 2 different characters, and I know that it's getting a lot of reviews from people who are used to having multiple perspectives. I really loved this book, and throughout the entire Penderwick series, I've seen so much growth and development through each sister and each member of the family. I can really argue that everything that happened quite naturally, and I'm totally fine with its outcome. I will say, however, I found the ending of the book to be a little anticlimactic, and of course I would have loved the multiple perspectives, but I understand that Jean Birdsall has always gone with the younger age Penderwicks as the narrators of the storyline. First of the YA books I read this May was The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. The Scorpio Races follows a girl named Puck who irrationally enters a horse race where every horse but her own is a Kapellishka, which is a flesh-eating water horse. Maggie Stiefvater's Kapellishka are actually a mashup of both Scotland and Irish folklore that deal with myths of flesh-eating horses that come out of the water and eat people. She blended all these elements together, and in my opinion, it really works for the story. As far as writing goes, Maggie Stiefvater definitely has her own unique writing style. Though it shows up in this novel really well, I would not say that it comes out in full force like it does in the Raven Boy cycle, which I was a little bummed about. I think she might have reined back a little bit of her writing because honestly the story is wild enough. I said the story is about Puck, but honestly it's also about Sean, which is the other character. I'd say the main plot focuses on Puck, but Sean is the other perspective in this book. Reading from both perspectives, I honestly didn't know how I wanted this story to end and was still somehow completely satisfied with its ending, if that makes any sense. One of the other highlights in this book was the world building. Maggie Stiefvater's writing has always made filler moments seem almost super essential to the story. Even the minor characters added something to the world that I felt made it feel a lot more realistic, as far as flesh-eating horses go. In the end, this ended up being a super satisfying read for me. Though it was completely different from the Raven Boys, I was not disappointed with the beginning, middle, or end, and I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads. And finally, for the month of May, I read Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This book is about a heist in a high fantasy universe. Kaz, Inej, Jesper, Matthias, Nina, Wyland. Do we get any points of view from Wyland? Anyway, the heist is conducted by 6 members, but the point of view is only 5. I really enjoyed the magic system in this book, but I feel like I would have understood it better if I had read the Grishaverse trilogy that came before it. But there's Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. And I think I would have had a better understanding starting off if I had read that first, but these will definitely hit my TBR later in the year. I, despite that, really enjoyed this universe and its magic, and ended up giving Six of Crows 5 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads. For my TBR pile for the month of June, I actually have 4 YA books, and the rest are picture books. My 4 YA books are Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. This is the Owl Crate edition. I'm currently reading Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller, and I'm currently on chapter 6. I'm also reading Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, which is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. This book has beautiful brushed pages, and I'm on chapter 11. And finally, I plan on reading on both audiobook and physical form Illuminae from the Illuminae Files by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I've heard that the reading experience while listening to this on Audible was really awesome, so I decided to check it out, and I'll be having both the physical copy and the audiobook playing. After that, my picture book TBR for the month of June is all science themed, so I have Batman Science, Batarangs and Grapnels. Batman Science, Batarangs and Grapnels, the science behind Batman's utility belt. That'll take a couple takes. Batarangs and Grapnels? Grapnels. Is that like, yeah, that's like grappling hooks and stuff. Batman Science, Grapnels. Now I can't stop saying Grapnels. Batman Science, Batarangs, and Grapnels, the science behind Batman's utility belt by Agnieszka Biskap. Charles Darwin's Around the World Adventure by Jennifer Thermes. Zero the Hero by Joan Holub and Tom Leichenheld. Outdoor Math Fun Activities for Every Season by Emma Adbosh. Ada Lovelace, Poet of Science, The First Computer Programmer by Diane Stanley, illustrated by Jesse Hartland. And finally, The Inventor's Secret, What Thomas Edison Told Henry Ford by Suzanne Slade and illustrated by Jennifer Black Reinhardt. And that concludes my first wrap-up and TBR for May and June. Thank you for watching. Bye. Boom. We did it, guys. We conquered. This book I just had to pick up once I saw that it was about Carl Sagan. I wanted to see how he was portrayed. This book. After this one, I'll get tea. I gotta get through these. I need tea. For sure. To get to know their mother, I'm sorry, I spit on you. Rita Garcia is an Own Voices author. My tea. Yes. Batman Science, Batarangs, and Grapnels, the science behind Batman's utility belt. This is by, holy shit.
PronounceNames.com.
Agnieszka. It was Agnieszka, right? By Agnieszka Biskap.